The Talk Station presents Faith Matters, a look at contemporary stories and issues from a faith perspective. While this is a pre-recorded show, we are interested in your ideas, comments, and questions, and we urge you to email them to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life.
And now on the Talk Station, Faith Matters.
And welcome to our program for this week. I'm Ben Ball. Good to have you with us here on this Sunday morning. And we are joined together with Robert Cornegy, Reverend Robert Cornegy, Reverend Carl Zarowski, and Bishop Doc Loomis joining us once again. And good day, gentlemen.
Good day, Ben.
Go Falcons.
Morning.
That is Super Bowl Sunday, isn't it?
It is.
That's right. At least when this is being heard. Let's take a look at one of our articles for today. Comes from The Stream and at stream.org, and it is called Hysterical Responses to Executive Order Ignore Main Issue, The Nature of Islam. And the subtitle of this is an interesting part of this as well. Can peaceful Muslims retain their religion's identity while rejecting its foundational texts? This is by Rob Schwartzwalder. I had to practice that. And he writes, President Trump's executive order on immigration has caused enormous furor, yet its impetus seems largely to have gone unnoticed. Chaos in the Near East. He goes on to talk about how that since the Arab Spring, there has been, as President Obama identified, these states that are failed states, and how President Trump's immigration moratorium involves 7 states that have been recognized as failed states, and their possibility of introducing terrorism into the U.S. by keeping borders open to them. So, but in this, his Schwartzwalder's premise here is that this goes back to an issue with Islam in its foundational texts, in that these failed states are really are the products of people who are returning to the foundational texts of Islam, not where it has progressed in the West, and not where it's gone. So, is that? Do you see that? And Doc, let me start with you. Do you see that as really something that we are ignoring as we've seen all the protests about this? That they're just leaving off to the side the whole issue of whether Islam is actually peaceful or not.
Well, it's against the law to say anything negative about any faith, person, gender, or anything else in this country, I think.
No, oh, really?
Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me that doesn't get reported on very much. But we deal with all this stuff on superficial levels. We talk about feelings and love and respect and inclusivity and all these things. But every once in a while, you get an author like this fellow who digs down into what's really below all of it. And when you dig down, we don't want to go there. We don't want to look at what's down in the swill that's under all this stuff. I mean, that's the way the devil makes this work. He always makes things at the top look real beautiful and lovey and wonderful. But then if you dig down below it, you find the devil in the details, and you find him lurking in the swill. And this is an article where a guy actually dug down into the swill, and he's willing to point out what radical Islam is, and try to bring this conversation to the front. So the answer to your question, no, we do not talk about this enough, and it is the swill beneath the beauty.
Robert, ISIS claims a mantle of Islam that many other Muslims don't claim or reject. Yet they're not seem to be, even though we're making efforts, they're not seem to be going away anytime soon. So this immigration moratorium is just part of what hopefully is a larger strategy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, it's amazing, isn't it, how the two administrations view this issue so differently. And so we're coming off an administration that thought the best way to handle this was to try to contain it somewhat by being gentle.
Diplomacy.
Right. We can do it through words. We can do it through unifying to try to get other nations, that disagree, and we can kind of, that's kind of what's going on with Iran. That was why that decision, recently that we're finding out is
already being violated.
Yeah, being followed. But so if you can't contain it, is the question, then what do you do? And our immigration policy is going to change. I mean, it already is, so that the what's called extreme vetting, which is from a politically correct position, is meat to the progressive side, the liberal side, because they don't want anybody. The basic assumption of these two worldviews is that people are basically good, and we can kind of change the circumstances so they can be better. And then there's another position that which is the biblical worldview, is that man was created good, but fell. And so that now this sin nature has corrupted everything that it touches. And so both, within the human race, as well as in creation itself. And that's how pervasive it is. And so we've got these two approaches to it. And the historical one has been the latter of those two, for the Western world, that man needed to be constrained.
Right.
That the purpose of government is to protect the innocent and to constrain the wicked. And so that's where this, if you want to say there's an ideological debate or a philosophical debate, that's where this is taking place.
Well, I had a chance to talk with the author here, Rob Schwartzwalder, and Carl knows when he mentioned that this is a question of theology, that the ISIS and those extremists are claiming a mantle of theology, that they're acting on a theological basis, not on doctrinal, not something that progresses or moves beyond and is reinterpreted in light of the day. It's they're claiming that this is a foundational to their text, and so they're proud of that in that fundamentalist manner, and they reject what other people who follow the faith say.
Right. Well, when you get into the topic of reading the text theologically, when I address a text in the Scriptures, I think about it in terms of who wrote it, when was it written, who was the audience that received it the first time, and what was going on in their lives, in their world at that time, and see how what the Word says applies to that context. Right? Is our world today the same socio-political world that it was when the text was written? The answer is no. Things are different now. Things look different. We deal with different problems. Now, granted, the issue of sin and people being disobedient to God, that hasn't changed. The need of us to be reconciled to God, that hasn't changed. But some of the influences that we deal with in the world, that looks different today. And you could talk to a Christian and have somebody do a literal interpretation of what the Scripture says and try to apply it directly to a situation today, and it doesn't always work. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is God trying to tell us in this particular passage, and how does that apply to this context today?
Well, in this article, he says, to be clear, only a minority of Muslims want violence-based adherence to Sharia law to dominate their own countries, let alone the world. Yet a responsible reading of the Quran implies the Islamic domination attained at the tip of a sword was the aim of Muhammad from his religion's beginnings. So when we go back to the thrust of this article, or its idea of tying it into immigration policy and where we stand with this current moratorium, Doc, we're then looking at how do we vet the difference? How do we know who is adhering to that fundamentalist doctrine and who isn't?
Wow, that's a good question.
But isn't that the thrust of what we,
is.
what Donald Trump says? We need at least this amount of time to try and figure that out. I don't know how you're going to do that in 90 days.
There's a basic difference between the two faiths, right? One of them was just nicely elucidated on there. It's a faith that comes at the tip of a sword. Our faith, the Christian faith, comes at the foot of the cross. And so one faith is imposed on, and another one is joyfully offered and happily received at the foot of the cross of Christ. And so my feeling about that is, how do you know? Well, if you've got somebody that wants to come to this country and impose his or her faith, law, or anything else on this country, then probably that's not a good person to have here. If it's somebody that wants to come and freely receive what this country has to offer and accept it as our faith, as we do in our faith, then I would say that would be a good person to come here.
I can't see a bureaucracy actually figuring that out, though.
Not in this short break period.
Well, no. And, part of the problem is that the 7 nations that were originally identified, and it was identified by the previous administration, were the ones that they were having a difficult time getting information about the people that were coming in.
They weren't cooperating.
Well, they were either not cooperating or there
able
wasn't anyone there.
Yeah, right. Nobody was home.
To do it. Yeah. And so that's why it has a limited scope and a limited time in terms of who they're looking at.
And that's going to be, again, an ongoing discussion. I am going to be really interested in what, in 3 months down the road, what the word is going to be. We'll have more to come on Faith Matters in a moment here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. Welcome back to Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ben Ball, along with Bishop Doc Loomis, Reverend Carl Zarowski, and Reverend Robert Cornegy. And we are talking about an article here that's an interesting understanding of where we're going with technology and where it relates to health and also our moral values here, too. This is called Idaho to End Telehealth Restrictions for Abortions. Idaho and Planned Parenthood have settled a lawsuit over legislation enacted in 2015 that restricts access to telehealth for women considering an abortion. And this is from a website called M Health Intelligence. And the article begins, telehealth advocates, and I guess we need a definition of that, first of all. That is where a doctor is not present with you, but you're dealing with it either robotically, which is in place in some local hospitals here too, or you're dealing with it just over a Skype, just over some other kind of communication, but they're not present in the room. So telehealth advocates are cheering the end of a legal battle in Idaho over whether healthcare providers could use virtual visits to treat women seeking an abortion. Planned Parenthood has announced the settlement of a lawsuit filed against the state over 2 laws passed in April 2015. One, the Telehealth Access Act, allows providers to prescribe medications during a video consult with a patient, but adds one line specifically excluding drugs used to induce an abortion. A second law requires that a physician be present with the patient during an abortion. Under terms of the settlement, Idaho lawmakers will repeal the latter law and amend the Telehealth Access Act to eliminate the telemedicine drug restriction by the end of 2017. In other words, Robert, a doctor now could give the okay for an abortion from wherever they are. They don't have to be anywhere near you. They don't have to have examined you.
Well, that's right.
In this law,
that's exactly right. And this was shocking to me, quite frankly. I mean, I've been involved in the ministry for pregnancy assistance for a long time, and this one caught me off guard. I had heard about the restrictions that had been put in. I didn't realize that they were starting to fall. And
abortifacients had to be sold in person in 19 states, according to this article.
Through a prescription. You had to have seen a doctor. You had to have a script. You had to go through that process, and it was fairly strict. So we're seeing just another area where the culture of death is using technology just as much as the culture of life. And so basically the way it works, as I understand it, generally speaking, is that there will be a, air quotes, trained staff in the room with the patient, the client, and that person will be and they'll be in a video, some kind of
Video conference.
right, communication with a physician who then, and there's some kind of pro forma survey or assessment process that they go through. And then the doctor okays for the staff person, who evidently does not have to be a medical person. It can be anybody, can administer the drug. The Plan B is one of the ones that we're seeing invading our state right now. So this is the new thing, and it's a way to get around there was a big fight a year or two ago about should abortion clinics, have to have the same medical standards that any other clinic would have to have.
Right.
And that the doctors had to have
that's still being
Hospital
fought.
rights.
Yes.
yeah, they have to be approved at a local hospital, and that they don't have to do the abortion there, but in case something happens, they would be able to admitting rights to the local hospital. And so we lost that battle.
And now this is also addresses specifically abortion-inducing drugs.
Correct.
So not the physical procedure of it, but the abortifacients, the Plan B.
That's exactly right. That's what we're dealing with. Hey, an abortion's an abortion.
Yeah.
So I mean, it takes the life of the child, and so that's this is a life and death decision that's now being made remotely.
In this article says in 2015, Iowa's Supreme Court shot down the state's ban on the practice of abortion by telemedicine, allowing the state's 3 Planned Parenthood clinics to continue treating women through secure two-way video consults. And apparently the legislators then approved a bill to bring back that ban. But the process in use since 2008 enables a doctor to connect with a patient via video feed and watch while a trained staff member takes vitals, collects a blood sample, and performs an ultrasound. The doctor then reviews the information, talks to both patient and staff member, and if appropriate, remotely unlocks a receptacle containing the abortion-inducing drugs. The doctor then watches the patient take the medication. So again, all done by, it could actually be a video of a doctor. You could end up with not even actually having a real person. It could be virtual on both sides.
This is the whole Big Brother thing coming.
I just did this the other day. I had an impacted wisdom tooth, and I got on a webcam with a dentist, and he directed me to get some pliers out of the garage and helped me to get that tooth out. Yeah. I mean, seriously. I mean, if this was anything else, people would be up in arms about it. The medical community would be up in arms. But since all we're really doing is taking a human life, why care?
Yeah.
This is what this has come to. We would be genuinely upset. We would scream about the level of professionalism in dental surgery if we could do a video with pliers. But we can kill a baby without even seeing a physician, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, it just makes the head spin. And all this is about, this business about women in Idaho deserve the right to have access to the safest, highest quality health care. No, they deserve the right to do things. What this is about is taking down any possible barrier that could be left, where you actually have to confront another human and have a real conversation, where you might have to walk by protesters outside of the Planned Parenthood clinic, where, you know what I mean, where you have to have your parents take you. No, now you can just do it online. This is just the devil taking down barriers, making it easier and easier to sin, period. End of story.
Why even have the other person there too?
Well, that's where this is going. I mean, that's just what you're saying, isn't it? Is that eventually you won't have to go to the
you sit in a kiosk in a mall.
Right.
It'll be like
you'll be at home.
It'll be like getting your blood
pressure.
pressure.
You'll do it on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be little machines like at the CVS.
Right.
You put you put yourself in the machine, and there you go.
Right. Exactly.
And what I think we're going to see here is that this is going to set a legal precedent. And and so what happens here is the legality becomes more important than the morality. And if somebody wants to do this, introduce this here in North Carolina, then they can say, oh, but they've done it here, and here's the court case that shows that it's okay. And then at some point, like you're talking about, you may have it to where it's in a kiosk, okay, because somebody's going to say, well, we don't have to have this, and I can prove it in court.
Well, the issue at hand is that this is making that premise that abortion, whether a physical abortion or where you actually go in and dismember the child and take the child out, or whether you do it by chemical, is a normal form of birth control.
Right.
That's what this is.
It's using abortion as birth control.
It's birth control. And so, and people look at you like, oh, well, yeah, that's what we're doing now, isn't it? But this just adds another log on that blaze that's burning in our culture. And it's going to consume our culture is the way this thing goes, because it's we're given a choice: choose life, choose death, choose blessing, choose cursing. And it's real clear what you're choosing. It's a very binary decision.
District Court Judge Lynn Windmill, who presided over the Idaho lawsuit, had noted prior to the settlement that the two laws challenged by Planned Parenthood provide, quote, provide few, if any, health benefits for women, and that any benefits, quote, are outweighed by the burden these laws imposed on access to abortion. The opinion may come to play if Idaho lawmakers refuse to repeal the legislation under terms of the settlement. Windmill will declare those laws unconstitutional and unenforceable.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just remarkable. That would be that would be the settlement. That, oh well, we'll just make it unconstitutional if you won't agree, if you don't go to this route. Fourth, if talk about legislating from the bench, this is directly doing that. So, but also, as you said, Doc, this is just reducing the idea of value of life down to nothing more than getting your fingernails clipped. I mean, that's unfortunately, I think.
Going and getting a
pedicure. This is again sad. I think a sad story. But as we look at this, and we'll see whether or not, because this is kind of an obscure article that came out. It was not widely distributed. We'll see whether or not this then is other legislatures and other courts rule on this before there are other district judges and appellate judges appointed.
Well, that's right, and that's why elections matter, and that's why Supreme Court justices are really important.
Yeah, and we've just had the announcement of the next pick by Donald Trump for this, and I do believe that Judge Gorsuch would rule as Scalia would rule in this case too. So we'll see where that goes. This could end up there. This is Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. You're invited to stick around and join us for our next segment that's coming up in just a moment. Welcome back to Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240, and thanks for joining us. And I'm Ben Ball, along with the Reverend Robert Cornegie. Reverend Carl Zarowski and Bishop Doc Loomis is with us, and as we take a look at a couple of different articles in this segment. This is from the New York Times, and I wasn't surprised by this at all, actually, when it came out. And it says Obama's protections for LGBT workers will remain under Trump. The White House said on Monday that President Trump would leave in place the 2014 Obama administration order that created new workplace protections for gay, lesbians, bisexual, and transgender people. In a statement issued in response to growing questions about whether Mr. Trump would reverse the Obama order, the White House said the president was proud to embrace gay rights. President Trump continues to be respectful and supportive of LGBTQ rights, as he was throughout the election. The statement said the president is proud to have been the first ever GOP nominee to mention the LGBT community in his nomination acceptance speech, pledging them to then to protect the community from violence and oppression. So it keeps in the order, which uses language again just about non-discrimination, basically on employment and federal employment as well. So this is anybody surprised? I mean, was this Robert? You're not surprised with it? You're the first one to say no.
Yeah, no. We were talking about this a little earlier, and it's interesting. The Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. How those organizations have been, shall we say, evolving.
Yeah.
On these issues.
Well, that's how President Obama described his position.
Yeah, that's right. His positions evolved. So so no, I don't. It was just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
When you have basically it declared that the government is going to protect these rights, then.
The order banned the companies that do federal work from discriminating against gay, lesbian, and bisexual and transgender employees. It was the first time the government explicitly protected federal workers from discrimination based on gender identity. So creating it didn't necessarily create a class that you then had to recruit, but it said that the federal contractors could not discriminate against them. Anybody opposed? I mean, really object to that? As far as that goes, no. Or is this an incremental thing as well? So, Carl,
I don't have any opposition to it. I mean, I think it's a good law. We're talking about what the government is choosing to do with the people that work for the government. That's perfectly okay by me. I don't have any problem with that at all.
I think it's always been a conservative position that if you can do the work, if you're qualified to do the job, we don't really care what else.
Sure. Now I worked for the state for a while, and when we would bid out contracts, we had requirements that we had to make an effort to bring in minority-owned companies or make sure that they had an opportunity to bid on the work, that sort of thing, which I was fine with that too. But, it was a requirement. We had to show we have made this effort to do that. I don't see this law here saying that the federal contractors have to say we made a good faith effort to include LGBT
candidates. Or whatever, right? But Doc, this is some critics do say though that that's the next step, is that then federal to bid out a federal contract, then you'll be required to recruit somebody who identifies or has a gender identity different from you.
Well, and what the churches need to be concerned about is that while we don't receive federal money, we receive federal tax advantages, and it's a very quick step from stone to stone to get us in the position where we can be seen as receiving a federal benefit and therefore would be required to follow these same policies as they're from time to time established. I think that's what the church needs to be looking at right now, because this is edging really close to our separations.
That's what we've been talking about through many of these things, is that incrementalism and how it's actually a tactic. It's not something that people just sort of fall into, although sometimes you do. But as far as the left is concerned, or the progressive side, is that these are tactical steps in a process, and we see this going on. And so and the stated position. Look, I mean, I'm all for protecting individual rights. The government is inclusive. The church, and people get upset when I say this for some reason, is exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
The church is composed of Christians, folks, and the government includes everybody. And so these are two different institutions established by God with different purposes. And the problem is when we start conflating the two. And the government has this habit now of trying to impose its worldview, its inclusiveness onto an exclusive organization.
Well, and also last week we talked in one article written by a liberal Democrat who said that we also make the mistake of looking to our government for moral leadership.
That's exactly right.
And that we should be careful about that too. See, that's where I didn't see when I saw articles coming out that the LGBT community was all scared after Trump's election. I said, why? He's probably much more going to be aligned with your ideas and agenda than anybody else.
Much more inclusive.
Yes,
in his worldview. That's right.
Because it doesn't necessarily stem from a moral worldview.
Not necessarily. That's right.
I mean, we're hoping that will improve in his life. His life will evolve in a more Christian and godly way.
Correct. That's right. And that we do that. That's the impact of the Spirit of God moving in our lives. But it's this.
But we do have to be careful about that incrementalism, and on that score, we see this now with the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. As the Boy Scouts New York Times article says, Boy Scouts reversing century-old stance will allow transgender boys. The century-old stance thing confused me because I didn't know that it was ever
articulated.
Articulated that way. But reversing a stance of more than a century, the Boy Scouts of America on Monday said that the group would begin accepting members based on gender listed on their application, paving the way for transgender boys to join the organization instead of what was supposedly on their birth certificate. And I don't remember when joining the Cub Scouts, either for me or for my sons at the time, if they had to bring their birth certificate. I think in those days we just kind of made some assumptions that we don't make now. And isn't that it? I mean, that was the incremental result. Here.
That was one of the consequences of camping.
you find out. Yeah, you discovered things. I don't know if you want to go there. Well, I do remember when I went to Camp Canada. I mean, everybody took a shower in the same room. So
that's exactly right.
So no surprise there. But the idea here, though, is, and it stems from a rejection when a young person was kicked out of a troop after declaring that his transgender. He was transgender.
In New Jersey, of all places.
In New Jersey, yes. Yeah. I don't know why of all places, but I mean, okay, all right. But this announcement came amid a national debate over transgender rights, but it also comes about a year after the Boy Scouts said that they would accept gay members.
About 3 years ago. Yeah.
Was that 3 years ago?
It's been 3 years. Yeah.
Wow. And then also 2 years later, the organization ended its ban on openly gay adult leaders. Again, Doc, you've been involved in Scouts in the past, and so is this that incremental thing that we're talking about now? Is it? I mean, I looked up and I tried to see is there any movement to merge Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, because I'm not sure that I don't understand why they would even be separate any longer.
Well, all I know is when I started in scouting, we wore knee socks, and I felt like a girl then. I don't. So to some degree, I think the uniforms had already merged a long time ago. I don't think there's any talk about merging it. It's just, the question I have to ask myself is what's left. What's the next thing? If it's incrementalism, then to what end? What's the next? So you can be transgendered, you can be gay, you can even lead if you're gay or transgendered. So is there anything left?
Well, what's the agenda? I mean, incrementalism is another way of saying progression, isn't it?
The agenda is to de-establish normative
Traditions,
roles.
yes.
Period. That's the agenda. So it's just like when we were in college and people were starting to put inclusivity into our books and using all inclusive pronouns and things like that. This is the end of it. So pretty soon we won't call, there won't be his.
Well, we stopped
hers.
saying mankind in Bibles.
We did stop saying mankind. But this is, no one is going to be happy until there is no use of any gender-related pronoun ever. And there's no gender-specific anything. Bathrooms? Ring a bell with anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, can't have it.
We're going to have to rewrite some languages.
Oh, it's all been taken. Trust me, that's all been taken care of.
French,
It's all been
Spanish.
taken care of.
Let's look for a minute at something about the Boy Scouts. I was curious as to, what was the Boy Scouts' stand with Christianity? What was their relationship with Christianity? And on their website, they identify themselves as a values-based youth development organization. Okay, so the question is, whose values? What values?
That's a question we should all be asking, and as many churches are going to be asking this now as to whether or not they're going to continue to host troops. We'll have more to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. Welcome back to Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240, and thank you for joining us. And it is Super Bowl Sunday when this show is airing, so we thought we'd try to do, if we can, something on that might be relatable.
Faith matters.
After all, last year at this time, I wore my Panthers coat into the sanctuary, and then just took it off and just said, "Oh, I forgot I had that on," and. But there will be all over the country on Sunday. There'll be references. There are going to be references in church to it. Churches will have Super Bowl parties, or they'll have. I think our youth group is going to have a pre-Super Bowl party and gathering, and then send them home in time for the kickoff. So we do find it, Robert, on that Sunday, driving a lot of what we do on that Sunday, besides what we do in church.
Yeah, it is. And actually, I have to confess that our church, we do have our regular church service and all of that, Sunday school and everything. But then at 2:00 in the afternoon, we have our own Super Bowl game.
See,
and we have two teams that come from church, and we play a game.
Touch football.
Touch football.
Uh-huh.
I've had to bow out, but
I might come over and join you on that.
Yeah, come on over. It's over at the Western Park area out there, and so we do that. And then the youth have a Super Bowl, and they have athletes. You can get all the videos now of all the different athletes with Christian testimonies, and they play it during the halftime show and at different times. So it's, you try to put as much of a faith veneer on it, because it is, obviously there are a lot of Christians that are playing professional football, and so it's a great opportunity.
And we're thankful for that.
Yeah, a great opportunity for them to get their testimonies out there.
In fact, I know, and I follow a number of the Panthers, the Carolina Panthers, that profess their faith and talk about it. Even when they hired a new punter, I went back and looked and saw how his Christian testimony has helped form his life. But for Carl, who is the Pittsburgh fan in here, the Steelers know a little bit about this game.
Yeah, we have 6 rings. Nobody else has 6. I was hoping we were going to see 7 this year.
Yeah.
But when the Steelers played the Patriots, obviously the Patriots were the better team that day. I could argue about officiating. I could argue about anything. But the fact is, they lost to a better team.
But you won't be rooting for those Patriots.
No, I will not. This will be one of the first times in my life I've ever pulled for a team from Atlanta, but I'll be pulling for the Falcons.
Yeah. And I know, Robert, you had mentioned, too, because of Tom Brady's now, the political argument has gone into it.
Oh, it's just, isn't it amazing? Isn't it sad how politics has invaded you can't get away from it. And that's what football and sports has always been, has just been a release, a way to just forget about all that other stuff and then just enjoy the physical activity of whether you're playing it yourself or watching someone else play it. And now it's polluted with politics. And so Brady he had a Make America Great Again hat in his locker.
He had one, yeah.
In his locker. And so now he's being abused for being a Trump supporter, and that it just goes on and on and on. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Doc's from Cleveland, so.
Yeah, but
I think we're done.
But unlike my brother, conversation. Unlike my brother Carl, when I moved to the great state of North Carolina, I adopted the local football dynasty. I didn't cling foolishly to something from Pittsburgh or Cleveland. Well, who would cling to anything from Cleveland? Oh my gosh, Cleveland knows nothing about those Super Bowls.
Yeah. Well, and it probably will be that way for some time. We'll see that ending anytime soon. But it is a time, though, when we are in our churches and we talk to our folks, and on Sunday that's going to be the conversation. So where do we go with that? I think we do look at some of our sports fans that are also and players that are also Christians, and it's interesting because you see that in any of the sports that play on Sunday. By the way, for example, golf has they have a ministry. They have chaplains that lead, and also many of the golfers that lead their way, like Bubba Watson will lead Bible studies and do that. In racing, there's a motor racing ministry that tours in all, not just NASCAR, but all different kinds of sports. And on Sunday, almost all the teams, I think the Oakland Raiders is the exception, and the Panthers used to have one. I don't think they have one now, but they have team chaplains that also serve to hold a Bible study or prayer sessions in the morning, and some of them have services that way too. So our Christians who are athletes don't necessarily ignore their faith on that Sunday. In fact, many of them celebrate it and give credit to God for their successes too. So it's going to be an interesting day. This is on obviously early in the morning, and ESPN and others have already begun their coverage. They cover it all day long, even though the kickoff doesn't happen until about 6:20, and it'll be like that. That will be the order of the day.
And this year, just like every year, I will mention something about the fact that people will go out of their way to watch the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But are they as dedicated about coming to church?
Oh, now you're going to bring that into it.
I have to meddle. I'm a pastor.
Stir that stick. Step back.
If we only had one church service a year, I'll bet they'd be pretty good about it.
Depends on what our halftime show
is. Speaking of which, that's the one part that I know. The last time we had a Super Bowl party at our house, and it was the Super Bowl where they had the costume.
Oh, that's the
malfunction.
Today's the anniversary. Today's the anniversary of that, by the way.
Is that when? That's the last time we had a Super Bowl party. Yeah. And I fortunately
wait. You have a calendar that has the anniversary of a costume malfunction?
It was on this day in history that we had this morning.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Okay. Whatever.
Yeah. Fortunately, I had the remote in my hand and hit it before anything really happened. But it was, look, I've gotten so I don't even, we just turned the TV off or go to another channel during the halftime. I think, who is it? Isn't it Lady Gaga is going to be the? Yeah, I'd have no.
Unless she was singing with Tony Bennett, I might watch it then.
Yeah, that's about it. So, and of course, the big thing about the commercials, the Super Bowl commercials, and you have to admit there have been some good ones. Some really
it
good
was
ones
in 2004 on this day when that happened with Janet Jackson. By the way, it's also 2009 when the Pittsburgh Steelers won their record 6th Super Bowl. Today's the anniversary of that.
There you go.
So, today, as we're recording this on a Wednesday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So but you say, there's lots of diversions. Well, you also have a lot of people, and this is one of the things that we talk about sometimes in church, different things that we do that bring people together that don't normally come to church. So you have a Super Bowl party, if you ever attend one. I haven't attended one in a long time. But you have people who often never have watched, or they don't have any interest in the sport. They come for the commercials, or they come for the camaraderie. But they, even the football fans there will say, "I have an opportunity to introduce you to the sport." Well, don't we do that in churches? I mean, we take that opportunity, whether it's weddings or funerals or meals or whatever. We may have an opportunity to bring people together that don't normally come into the church family or hang around us. So
yeah, there's some great little video clips online that you can go to, and one of them is "I Am Second." And they interview a lot of sports coaches and sport athletes and others.
We watched Tim Tebow's last Wednesday.
Okay.
It was really good. I mean, it was outstanding until he gets to the part where he talks about how he didn't make it. But I mean, it was really an awesome video about a guy just talking about his faith and how it got him through difficult times.
Yeah, they're excellent. It's sitting on a sofa talking to the camera. It's really feels very intimate, and talking about some real heart issues. So that's a great tool to use when you have opportunity.
So your assignment, if you're home listening, your assignment today is find out where politics gets into the actual Super Bowl game today.
Oh, well, yes.
Not just the Brady thing, but where will politics show up in the game? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, because it will, and at least it'll happen with Lady Gaga. It's going to happen at a halftime.
The celebrities can't help.
Yeah,
it.
they can't help. But will it happen with any of the announcers? I mean, you have Fox is broadcasting the Super Bowl this year, so I don't see it necessarily with Joe Buck and who's his. Troy Aikman,
right?
But when if it's on ABC, then no, definitely you get those, or even NBC, any of the others, you definitely get that. So will it come into it? Will there be a? Unfortunately, that'd be probably one of the drinking games that goes on during the Super Bowls. Is
how many times people say Trump
every time
exactly,
and see how that will happen. But it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's a national stage. I mean, they can't help but do that. Somebody's gonna buffoon will grab the microphone.
And I predict it will be the referees who do it.
The referees.
I'm just going with that prediction.
Okay, Carl, a score. What do you think?
Atlanta 3, New England nothing. Well, let's make it interesting. Let's make it 5-2.
Okay, I'd say 27-21 Atlanta.
I'm 32 Patriots.
Thank you for joining
you're
us
out now.
for Faith Matters. Email your comments, questions, and suggestions to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. Give me faith.
Faith Matters is a production of The Talk Station.